What happens when one of Hollywood's biggest stars sits down for what should be a simple morning interview, only to face disrespect that crosses every line? In just 40 seconds, a single comment from host Michael Strahan would ignite a firestorm that turned a friendly chat into the most explosive moment in Good Morning America history. Will Smith walked onto the Good Morning America set that morning with his signature smile, the kind that had won over audiences for decades. He was there to talk about his latest project, a film he'd poured his heart into. The studio lights were bright, the cameras were rolling, and everything seemed normal. Will took his seat across from Michael Strahan, with Robin Roberts and George Stephanopoulos sitting nearby, ready to join the conversation. "Welcome, welcome," Michael said, leaning back in his chair with a casual confidence that bordered on arrogance. "Great to have you here." "Thanks for having me," Will replied, genuine warmth in his voice. "Always good to be here." Robin smiled from her position at the desk. "We're so excited to hear about the new film, Will. It sounds incredible." "It really is," Will began, his enthusiasm clear. "This project has been years in the making. It's a story about family, about redemption, about second chances. We worked with an amazing cast and crew, and I think people are really going to connect with it." Michael interrupted before Will could continue. "Speaking of second chances, let's talk about your career. You've had some ups and downs, haven't you?" The shift in tone was immediate. George Stephanopoulos glanced at Michael, a flicker of concern crossing his face. Will maintained his composure, though his smile tightened just slightly. "Well, I think every career has its moments," Will said diplomatically, "but I'm grateful for every experience. They've all taught me something." Sure, Michael said, waving his hand dismissively. "But let's be real here. You've made some questionable choices. Some projects that, let's just say, didn't quite land the way you hoped." Robin shifted uncomfortably in her seat. "Michael, maybe we should focus on the new film." "I'm just being honest," Michael shot back, not looking at Robin. "That's what journalism is about, right? Asking the real questions." Will's posture straightened. "I appreciate honesty, but I'm here to talk about this film. It's something I'm really proud of." "Of course you are," Michael said, his tone dripping with condescension. "You're proud of everything you do. That's kind of your thing, isn't it? The whole positive attitude, inspirational quotes, all that stuff." George leaned forward. "I think what Will is trying to share is important. This film has a powerful message." "Does it, though?" Michael countered, completely ignoring the warning signs from his co-hosts. "Or is it just another vanity project? Because let's face it, Will, at this point in your career, aren't you just chasing relevance?" The studio went silent. Even the crew members behind the cameras seemed to freeze. Robin's eyes widened, and George looked like he wanted to crawl under the desk. Will sat perfectly still, processing what he'd just heard. The silence stretched on for what felt like an eternity. You could hear someone shift uncomfortably off camera. A phone buzzed somewhere in the studio. The lights seemed brighter somehow, more harsh, illuminating every detail of the uncomfortable moment unfolding. Will took a breath, clearly choosing his words carefully. "Michael, I'm going to give you a chance to rethink what you just said." "Rethink it?" Michael laughed, a sharp sound that echoed through the studio. "Why would I rethink it? It's a legitimate question. You've been in this business for what? 3 decades? 4? And here you are, still trying to prove something." "Proving something and being passionate about your work are 2 very different things," Will responded, his voice measured. "I love what I do. I love storytelling. That's not chasing relevance. And that's living my purpose." Michael leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "Purpose, right? Is that what we're calling it now? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks more like desperation." Robin's hand went to her mouth. George closed his eyes briefly, as if hoping this was all a bad dream he could wake up from. The producers in the control room were frantically whispering to each other, trying to decide if they should cut away. "You know what's interesting, Michael," Will said, his tone shifting slightly. "I've done hundreds of interviews over the years. Thousands, probably. And in all that time, I've met a lot of different types of interviewers. Some are curious, genuinely interested in the craft and the story. Some are skeptical, which is fine, that's their job. But every once in a while, I meet someone like you." "Someone like me?" Michael challenged. "And what's that supposed to mean?" "Someone who's more interested in creating a moment than having a conversation," Will explained. "Someone who sees a guest, not as a person with something to share, but as an opportunity to make themselves look clever or tough or edgy." Michael's expression hardened. "I don't need to make myself look anything. I am tough. I earned my place here." "No one's questioning that you earned your place," Will said. "What I'm questioning is what you're doing with it." "Oh, here we go," Michael said, throwing his hands up. "The lecture. I should have known this was coming." "It's not a lecture," Will countered. "It's an observation. You have this platform, this incredible opportunity to connect with people, to share stories that matter, to have meaningful exchanges, and instead, you're using it to what? Tear people down? Make them feel small." "I'm using it to ask hard questions," Michael shot back. "Something most people are too scared to do with you." Will shook his head slowly. "Hard questions would be asking about the challenges of bringing this character to life. Hard questions would be exploring the themes of the film and how they relate to current social issues. Hard questions would be discussing the collaborative process and the choices made in production. What you're doing isn't asking hard questions. You're just being hard." The distinction landed with weight. George nodded almost imperceptibly. Robin's eyes glistened with what might have been tears, though whether from frustration or sadness wasn't clear. "Chasing relevance," Will repeated slowly, each word measured. "That's an interesting way to describe someone's artistic work." "Come on, don't get sensitive," Michael said, laughing in a way that made the situation worse. "We're just having a conversation here." "A conversation requires respect," Will replied, his voice calm but firm. "What you're doing is something else entirely." Michael leaned forward, his demeanor shifting to something more aggressive. "Oh, here we go. Can't handle a little criticism? You know what your problem is, Will? You've been surrounded by yes men for so long that you forgot what real feedback sounds like." "Criticism and disrespect are not the same thing," Will said, his voice gaining strength. "And if you can't tell the difference, and that says more about you than it does about me." "There he goes," Michael said, looking at the camera as if inviting the audience to join him in mocking Will. "Playing the victim. Classic move." "I'm not playing anything," Will responded. "I'm simply pointing out that what you're doing right now has nothing to do with journalism or even entertainment. It's just mean." "Mean?" Michael scoffed. "You think this is mean? This is nothing. This is me being nice. You want to see mean? I can show you mean." "Please don't," George interjected, his voice tight with barely controlled frustration. "Michael, seriously, we need to redirect this." "Stay out of it, George," Michael snapped, not taking his eyes off Will. "This is between me and our guest here." "Our guest who you've been attacking since the moment he sat down," George fired back, unable to stay quiet any longer. "This isn't right, and you know it." "I know what makes good television," Michael retorted. "And it's not some boring puff piece about how great Will Smith is." Will's eyebrows raised. "Is that what you think this was supposed to be? A puff piece? I came here prepared to have a real conversation about the work, about the process, about what this story means. But you never gave me that chance." "Because I'm not interested in your prepared talking points," Michael said. "I want to get to the real stuff. The truth behind the image you've spent decades crafting." "The truth?" Will leaned forward now, his patience clearly wearing thin. "You want the truth? Here's the truth. I've made mistakes in my career. I've chosen projects that didn't work out. I've had failures and setbacks. Every artist has. But I've also created work that's touched millions of people. Work that's made them laugh, made them think, made them feel something. And I'm proud of that. I'm proud of the journey, the ups and the downs, because they've all led me to who I am today. AI has been trying to stay relevant, Michael interjected. The words hung in the air like a slap. Robin actually gasped. George stood up from his chair, unable to sit through this anymore. Robin tried to intervene again. Michael, I think we should move on to another topic. No, let him answer, Michael insisted, holding up his hand toward Robin without looking at her. I want to hear this. Tell me, Will, when was the last time someone told you the truth? When was the last time someone said that maybe, just maybe, you're not as great as you think you are? Robin stood up now, joining George. Michael, stop. This has gone too far. I'll decide when it's gone too far, Michael said, his voice cold. I'm the lead anchor here. That doesn't give you the right to abuse guests, Robin said, her voice shaking with emotion. Will came here in good faith. He trusted us, and you're destroying that trust with every word that comes out of your mouth. I'm destroying trust? Michael turned on Robin now. Or am I finally doing what this show has needed for years? Real conversations. Real confrontations. Not these sanitized, pre-approved, corporate-approved nonsense interviews where everyone smiles and nods and pretends everything is wonderful. There's a difference between real and cruel, Robin said, her eyes blazing. And you've crossed that line. Michael waved her off. You're too soft, Robin. You always have been. That's why you'll never be taken seriously as a hard news journalist. The insult landed like a bomb. Robin's face went pale, then flushed red. George took a step toward Michael, his fists clenched at his sides. Don't you dare talk to her like that, George said, his voice low and dangerous. Don't you dare. Or what? Michael challenged, standing up now to face George. What are you going to do, George? Write me a strongly worded memo? Will watched this all unfold, seeing how Michael's cruelty extended beyond just him. This wasn't about one bad interview. This was a pattern, a way of being that hurt everyone around him. Will's jaw tightened. The smile was completely gone now. You don't know anything about me or what I think about myself. I know what I see, Michael continued, his voice rising. I see someone who can't accept that their best days are behind them. Someone who keeps trying to recapture past glory instead of accepting reality. And I see someone who mistakes arrogance for confidence, Will said, his voice steady but filled with power. Someone who thinks that being aggressive makes them strong. Someone who has forgotten that real strength comes from lifting others up, not tearing them down. Oh, please, Michael rolled his eyes. Spare me the motivational speaker routine. Save that for your Instagram posts? You know what? Will said, and there was a shift in his energy. A decision being made in real time. You're right about one thing. We are having a real conversation now. Just not the one you thought we'd be having. Finally, Michael said, seeming pleased with himself. Now we're getting somewhere. We're getting somewhere all right, Will agreed. We're getting to the part where I realize that staying here, in this chair, letting you continue to disrespect me, would be a disservice to myself and to everyone watching who's ever been made to feel small by someone in a position of power. Michael's smile faltered slightly. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the fact that I don't have to sit here and take this, Will said, his voice growing stronger with each word. I'm talking about the fact that no paycheck, no publicity, no platform is worth sacrificing your dignity for. George nodded vigorously. That's right, Will. You don't have to put up with this. See what you've done? Michael said to George. You've encouraged this. This is on you. No, George said firmly. This is on you. All of it. Every uncomfortable moment. Every insult. Every time you chose to attack instead of engage. That's all you, Michael. George stood up from his seat. Okay, I think we need to take a break. Sit down, George, Michael snapped. We're in the middle of something here. Yes, we are, Will said, standing up himself. We're in the middle of you showing everyone watching exactly who you are. The moment Will stood, the entire energy of the studio shifted. It wasn't just a guest standing up. It was a statement, a line being drawn, a boundary being set. Robin moved closer to Will, her expression full of concern and support. Will, I'm so sorry. This isn't what we wanted. I know it's not, Robin, Will said gently, placing a hand briefly on her shoulder. You've been nothing but gracious, but I can't stay. Don't you dare leave, Michael said, and there was something different in his voice now. Not anger exactly, but something like fear. The realization that this was spiraling beyond his control. If you walk out of here, you're proving everything I said about you. Will turned to face Michael fully, and when he spoke, his words were clear and deliberate. No, Michael, if I walk out of here, I'm proving that I know my worth, that I won't be anyone's punching bag, that I respect myself enough to remove myself from toxic situations. Toxic. Michael laughed, but it sounded forced. You're being dramatic. Am I? Will gestured around the studio. Look at your colleagues. Look at their faces. Do they look like people who think I'm being dramatic? Or do they look like people who are embarrassed and ashamed by what they've just witnessed? Michael glanced at Robin and George, and whatever he saw in their faces made him look away quickly. They're fine. Everyone's fine. You're making this into something it's not. I'm making this into exactly what it is, Will countered. A moment where someone with power used that power to try to humiliate someone else. And the only reason you're upset now is because it didn't work. Michael stood as well, facing Will across the interview space. And who am I, Will? Please, enlighten me. You're someone who mistakes cruelty for honesty, Will said, his voice steady and powerful. You're someone who thinks tearing others down makes you look bigger. You're someone who's sitting in that chair not because of your talent or your insight, but because someone gave you a chance. And now you've forgotten what that feels like. The color drained from Michael's face. Robin and George both stood now, uncertain what to do. The producers were frantically talking into their headsets, trying to figure out how to handle the situation. How dare you? Michael began, but Will cut him off. How dare I? How dare you? I came here as a guest, to share something meaningful, and you've done nothing but disrespect me from the moment I sat down. And for what? For ratings? For some viral moment? Is that what this show has become? Michael's face flushed red. You don't get to come on my show and lecture me about respect. Your show? Will laughed, but there was no humor in it. You mean the show that existed long before you got here and will exist long after you're gone? The show that's built on actual journalism and meaningful conversations? Because what you're doing right now isn't journalism. It's not even entertainment. It's just sad. Get off my set, Michael demanded, pointing toward the exit. Oh, I'm leaving, Will said, already removing his microphone. But not because you told me to. I'm leaving because I have too much respect for myself to sit here and be treated like this. Robin moved closer. Will, please, we didn't know this was going to happen. I know you didn't. Robin, Will said gently, his anger clearly not directed at her. You've always been nothing but professional and kind. Don't apologize for me, Michael interjected. I'm not sorry. Someone needed to say what everyone's been thinking. Will turned back to face Michael, and when he spoke, his voice was quiet, but carried more weight than anything he'd said before. You know what's really sad, Michael? I actually admired you. Your story, your journey, what you accomplished in football, and then transitioning to this. I thought you were someone who understood hard work and perseverance. But standing here right now, I see someone who's let whatever success they've had go straight to their head. Someone who's become exactly the kind of person they probably couldn't stand when they were coming up. Michael's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. For the first time since the interview started, he seemed at a loss. George stepped between them. Will, we're so sorry about this. This isn't what Good Morning America stands for. I know that, George, Will replied, which is why I hope the people in charge take a good look at what happened here today. You're making a huge mistake. Michael found his voice again, though it sounded shakier than before. Walking out on this interview, making a scene. Do you know what this is going to look like? It's going to look like a man who knows his worth, Will answered. It's going to look like someone who refused to be disrespected on national television. And honestly, I'm okay with that. Robin moved to Will's side. I'm so sorry. This shouldn't have happened. It's not your fault, Will assured her. You tried to redirect multiple times. You were professional. You were kind. That's all anyone can do. Michael scoffed. Oh, please. Spare us the saints and sinners routine. You're not a victim here, Will. You're just soft. Can't handle real questions. Real scrutiny. Real questions? Will turned back one more time. You didn't ask me one real question this entire time. You didn't ask about the film's themes, the character development, the message we're trying to share. You didn't ask about the collaborative process or what it was like working with the director. Those would be real questions. What you did was attack. And there's a difference. I was doing my job, Michael insisted. No, George interjected, surprising everyone. You weren't. Your job is to inform and engage viewers, not to ambush guests. Michael whirled on George. Stay out of this. I can't stay out of this, George replied firmly. This is my show too, and what you've done here reflects on all of us. The tension in the studio was suffocating. Crew members watched in stunned silence. Cameras continued rolling, capturing every second of the unfolding disaster. Will looked at each person on the panel. I want you all to know that I appreciate the invitation to be here. I'm sorry we couldn't have the conversation I hoped we'd have. Robin, George, thank you for trying. Don't patronize them, Michael spat. They don't need your approval. You're right, Will agreed. They don't need my approval. But they do deserve respect, which is something you seem incapable of giving to anyone, including your own colleagues. Robin touched Will's arm. We'll make this right. I hope you do, Will said sincerely. Because this show means something to people. It's been a staple of morning television for years. It deserves better than what happened here today. Michael laughed bitterly. Listen to you, acting like you're above it all. You're not better than me, Will. I never said I was, Will responded, but I do know how to treat people with basic human decency, and clearly that's something we differ on. Get out, Michael said again, his voice shaking with barely controlled rage. Just get out. I'm going, Will said, already walking toward the exit. But before I do, I want everyone watching to know something. The people who work on this show, the crew members, the producers, the other hosts, they work incredibly hard. They care about what they do. Don't let what happened here today color your view of them. They're good people trying to do good work. Always the hero, Michael muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear. Always got to have the last word, don't you? Will stopped walking, but didn't turn around. No, Michael, you can have the last word. I'm sure it'll be something you're very proud of. He continued toward the exit, his head held high. Robin looked like she might cry. George's face was a mask of controlled fury directed at Michael. The studio remained in shocked silence. This isn't over, Michael called out. You think you can just walk out of here and it all goes away? You just made the biggest mistake of your career. Will paused at the studio door, finally turning back one last time. You know what, Michael? If standing up for myself and refusing to be disrespected is a mistake, then it's one I'm willing to make. Because at the end of the day, I can look at myself in the mirror and be okay with who I see. Can you say the same? The question hung in the air, unanswered. Michael's face was bright red now, a mix of anger and something else. Shame, perhaps, or the dawning realization of what he'd done. That's what I thought, Will said quietly. Then he walked out, the studio door closing behind him with a soft click that somehow sounded louder than any of the shouting that had preceded it. For a long moment, nobody moved. The cameras kept rolling, capturing Michael standing alone, his co-hosts staring at him with expressions that ranged from disappointment to outright anger. The crew members looked at each other, uncertain what to do. Robin was the first to speak, her voice tight with emotion. "We need to go to commercial." "No," Michael said. "We're not going to commercial. We're going to continue the show." "There is no show to continue," George said flatly. "Our guest just left because you drove him away." "He left because he couldn't handle honest conversation," Michael insisted, but his voice lacked conviction. "Honest conversation?" Robin's usual warmth was completely gone. "Is that what you call what just happened? Because from where I was sitting, it looked like a personal attack." "You're overreacting," Michael said, but he was looking at the floor now, unable to meet his co-host's eyes. "Am I?" Robin challenged. "Because I'm pretty sure our phones are about to start ringing off the hook. I'm pretty sure social media is already exploding, and I'm pretty sure we're all going to have to answer for what happened here." George nodded. "She's right. This is going to have consequences." "For Will, maybe," Michael tried. "He's the one who walked out." "He walked out because you gave him no choice," George countered. "You attacked him, Michael. Unprovoked, without cause, and you did it on live television." The reality of the situation seemed to finally be settling in on Michael. His aggressive posture slumped slightly. "I was just trying to get a real interview." "That wasn't a real interview," Robin said, her voice sad now rather than angry. "That was cruelty disguised as journalism, and you know it." "I don't have to listen to this," Michael said, but he didn't move. "Yes, you do," George insisted. "Because we're your colleagues, your friends supposedly, and we're telling you that what you did was wrong. Completely wrong." Michael looked up at them, and for just a moment, something flickered across his face. Regret, maybe. Understanding. But then it was gone, replaced by defensiveness. "You're both being ridiculous," he said. "In a few days, everyone will forget this even happened." Robin shook her head slowly. "No, Michael, they won't. Because what happened here today wasn't just a bad interview. It was a moment that showed people who you really are. And moments like that, people remember." The show cut to commercial break, but the damage was done. In those few minutes, everything had changed. A simple interview had become something much bigger, much more significant. Will Smith had walked onto that set as a guest, ready to share his passion for his work. He'd walked out as someone who'd stood up for himself in the face of disrespect. Michael Strahan had started the interview as the host in control. He'd ended it as someone who'd revealed the worst parts of himself to millions of viewers. The door through which Will had exited remained closed, a physical barrier that somehow represented so much more. On one side, a man who knew his worth and refused to compromise it. On the other, a studio full of people dealing with the aftermath of what happened when ego and entitlement collided with dignity and self-respect. Robin walked over to the empty chair where Will had been sitting. She touched the back of it lightly, as if saying a silent apology. George remained standing, his arms crossed, staring at Michael with an expression that spoke volumes. "We need to figure out what we're going to say when we come back," George finally said. "I'll handle it," Michael replied. "No," Robin said firmly. "You won't. You've done enough." Michael started to argue, but the look on both his co-hosts' faces stopped him. For once, he had nothing to say. The commercial break ticked down, seconds moving toward the moment when they'd have to face the cameras again, face the audience, face the reality of what had just transpired. But Will Smith was already gone, walking away from a situation that had become untenable, his dignity intact, his principles uncompromised. In the end, that was what mattered. Not the viral clips that would inevitably circulate, not the think pieces that would be written, not the debates that would rage across social media. What mattered was that when faced with disrespect, when confronted with someone trying to diminish him, Will had made a choice. He'd chosen himself. He'd chosen his worth. And he'd walked away with his head held high, leaving behind a studio full of people who would have to reckon with what they'd witnessed, what they'd allowed to happen, and what it said about who they were.